What's up guys, it's me Deshaun, and it's about time we finally cook! How strong is Rimuru from That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime? He is one of the strongest anime characters, and today you're going to find out why. Now let's start things off with the beginning of the light novel, or the inception of Rimuru's journey as a demon lord. The very moment he died in the real world and became a slime. Upon his death, he would be a virgin, and this would give him the skill Great Sage. Now what makes Great Sage so special is the fact that it's basically Navi from Zelda, or the operator from Nier, but a lot less annoying and a lot more helpful. Imagine having someone in your ear just constantly giving you cheat codes on everything. It's basically having AI in a fantasy world. Rimuru would even describe this voice as a computer-generated voice. And within this one ability, 5 other abilities would exist within it. The first of which being Hasten Thought, which boosts your perception speed by 1,000 times. Keep in mind, this is at the beginning of the series. This would mean that for every second you are alive, you would experience that 1 second 1,000 times faster. 1 second for you would be 1,000 seconds for Rimuru. The next ability would be Analyze and Assess, where he could basically analyze his target's strength, weaknesses, and potential abilities, reading his opponent, giving him the upper hand in combat because he would know what to expect from his target. The next ability would be Parallel Operation, which would allow him to retain normal thoughts while also analyzing his opponent. Parallel Operation allows Rimuru's brain to focus on more than one thing at the exact same time. This means in combat, while he's analyzing an opponent, it would not interfere with his normal thought process. The next one would be Cast Cancel, which annuls the casting period required when using magic, meaning he can instantaneously use a spell without having to wait a specific time limit. And the fifth and final one would be All of Creation, which would provide full coverage of all unsuppressed matter and phenomena in the world. If he were to get a basic understanding of any concept that existed within the world, he could get a full analysis of it. As for his next ability, he would have Predator, which consists of 5 other abilities: Predation, Analysis, Stomach, Mimicry, and Isolate. But in order to save time, the basic idea of this ability is the fact that whatever Rimuru consumes, he can analyze it, whether it's organic or inorganic matter, as well as skills and magic. For example, if you were going to hit Rimuru with a fire attack, he could consume that fire attack, analyze it, and develop a counter for it, or even recreate it. With Predator, he also has another form of storage where he could keep weapons, craftable items, or any materials he wishes. It would basically be his own personal pocket dimension that he can use as an offensive or defensive ability, as storage. The list can go on. While inside of Rimuru's stomach, any and all objects would be unaffected by time. If you were to have food inside of his pocket stomach dimension, it would not expire. And the next 2 things that go along with this ability are where it gets really cool. If you're a fan of Kirby, let's just say Rimuru can basically do the exact same thing as him with the ability Mimicry. After something has been inside of his stomach and it's been analyzed, he can then reuse its abilities for himself. If Rimuru feeds on you, he can use your abilities. We see this when he first fights with the ogres. He would consume multiple monsters and begin to use their abilities. An evil centipede's paralysis breath, a black spider's sticky thread and steel thread, and an Armosaurus's body armor. And other than Mimicry, he would be able to use this ability called Isolate, where he can take a target or anything that he might not be able to analyze and break them down into power. Magical force that he could then use for himself and boost his strength. With these being the very first abilities Rimuru would acquire at the beginning of his journey, I feel like these would also be the most, easy to digest. The next thing I'd like to talk about would be CL. Remember that AI voice that I mentioned earlier inside of Rimuru's head? Her name would be CL. And she can prevent any, if not all, mind attacks from affecting Rimuru. The abilities of CL would get even deeper. With alteration, she would be able to modify and evolve skills, making brand new abilities, or just simply make Rimuru's current abilities stronger than what they already are. CL would also be able to predict attacks with future attack prediction. And whatever this ability does predict, it is guaranteed to happen. Meaning, if this ability were to tell me that you're going to cut in a direction, you're going to cut in that direction verbatim. Now, I'd like to say that right now, CL and the Great Sage are basically the same exact thing. So all of the abilities that I mentioned earlier, such as Thought Acceleration, Olive Creation, Chant Annulment, would be some of her abilities as well. But other than that, I'd like to cover the ones that I did not mention. With the ability Synthesis, CL would be able to combine two targets into a single object. And that would allow him to combine his skills into one brand new one. With Separation, you're able to separate two targets. Meaning that Rimuru could go to someone, attack them, and take their skills away from them with Separation. Any ability someone might have, he can take away. And he can also take away things from himself. If someone were to poison Rimuru, he could separate that poison from his body. He would also have Thought Domination. No, not that kind of thought, but the kind of thoughts in your head. This ability would allow him to manipulate anyone's mind, making them completely under his control. And on top of this, he would have Law Domination, which would allow him to have complete control over the laws of the world. And it doesn't matter whether or not it would be science or magic based at all. And on top of this, he would have the ability Food Chain, which basically allows him to switch and swap his abilities with his subordinates. All of the Guardians that I made a video on previously, he'd basically have access to all of their abilities. To put this into perspective, no human can fight Zegion because he has water domination. The human body is made up of water. Now, because Zegion could do this, Rimuru would be able to do that as well, meaning that no human would ever be able to fight Rimuru, because he'd be able to just manipulate the blood in their body and they die. Not even blood, but all forms of moisture. And then on top of this, CL can autopilot Rimuru's body in a Ultra Instinct-like state, where the AI fights way more efficient than a human with emotions ever could. Kind of crazy, because despite of how broken he currently is after what I just explained, there is still more to cover. So based on everything I just mentioned in terms of his abilities, I feel like that should give you a good idea or give you a decent benchmark on how strong he would be. And now I feel like we can slowly add on to this benchmark. Or I guess you could say the first layer of how strong he is. Now, in terms of tolerances and defenses, Rimuru can pretty much nullify anything. Just in case you're younger or you just don't know what nullify means, that means it cancels out anything. Cancels out abilities, verbatim. Rimuru would have physical attack nullification. That would mean no forms of physical attacks would work on him. He would also have spiritual attack nullification, meaning that anything that could potentially damage his spirit could not damage him. With natural effects nullification, any form of elements would not damage him as well. With abnormal condition nullification, if you try to paralyze him, put him to sleep, or make him corrode, anything along those lines, it just doesn't work. On top of this, he can't even feel pain because of pain nullification. The only way you could possibly damage Rimuru is through holy and demonic attacks, but he would still be resistant towards that. Now that we've got his defenses and nullifications out the way, let's dive right into his magic, and I'm not going to go over every single spell because that is a bit much. So I will be mentioning the strongest ones and summarizing others. And yes, what you're seeing on screen right now would be a list of Rimuru's abilities. And yes, it is still going. It is still going. And it's still going. I literally put it in fast forward. To start things off, Rimuru can manipulate the elements through fire, earth, water, anything elemental for the most part. He would also have holy magic at his disposal. And one of his attacks, Disintegration, can erase you at the speed of light. Alongside this, he would have the ability to resurrect himself and others. On the topic of life in the elements, he can actually summon elementals and demons as well. And if you thought these sounded broken, he would have access to nuclear magic. Alongside that, he would be able to use the strongest nuclear magic spell, Abyssal Annihilation. This attack is so strong it can tear down dimensions and destroy the planet. Regular nuclear magic can eat away at your cells and your spirit at the same time. And to be honest, you're not really defending against it. So if he has the strongest spell at his disposal, let's just say good luck fighting Rimuru back, as a magic nuclear light is tearing your DNA to shreds. On top of this, he can stop time and he can travel through it, travel through time and space. On top of this, he would have an ability called Distortion Field, which puts himself in a spatial dimension that nullifies all kinds of attacks, including spatial ones, and is the ultimate defense. Honestly, just think of Infinity on steroids. As far as magic is concerned, I don't want to spend 90% of the video talking about the amount of spells Rimuru has, so we're just going to move on. If time stop, leaping through time and space, and spatial shield around his body, or nuclear magic that can destroy the planet, I don't know what else you'd like for me to mention in terms of his magic. As for more skills and abilities, Rimuru has the ability to make clones of himself and has infinite regeneration. On top of this, he would have Demon Lord Aura that is so strong that if you are inside of it, it can kill you or drive you insane. His presence alone can kill, drive you insane, or even weaken your spirit. Imagine Conqueror's Haki, but instead of getting knocked out, you're just dead. Alongside this, he would have molecular manipulation. Do I really need to explain what that is? So far, he can manipulate molecules and the laws of the universe and or world. And there seems to be more abilities despite that. So another thing that I'd like to mention is the fact that Rimuru has two dragons inside of him, Veldora and Velgrin. And he can use their spiritual bodies and have them fight with him. If things get even dicier than that, he could create a body double and have that dragon spirit hop inside of his body double, and they can fight alongside Rimuru. Now, outside of having a good portion of Rimuru's broken abilities, Veldora would have probability manipulation. I shouldn't have to explain that, but you can change the probability of any outcome that he wants. In his other ability, Pursuit of Truth, he could go through the world records and events, basically kind of peering into the past and getting access to all types of information. Alongside this, he would also have Risk Prediction, which would allow him to look into the future. As for Velgrin, they would have Dimensional Leap, and this would give her access to another attack called Space-Time Continuous Attack, which would be an unavoidable dimensional attack that hits you beyond space and time. Honestly, getting jumped by Rimuru and these two dragons is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I just don't know how anyone can fight back. I really do not. And if they're not on the field, he can use their abilities because of, remember that ability earlier? Food Chain. Well, in this case, they're technically a part of him, so that's just kind of naturally what he can do. He doesn't even need Food Chain. But keep this in mind. He gets all the abilities from his guardians. He gets all the abilities of the dragons that exist inside of him. It's so much, it's making my head want to explode. It's insane how the creator of Slime Isekai makes this all work. That's some really good writing. Now, before we go on to the big boy stuff, like his ultimate skills, I have to mention the fact that he has Universal Sense, which allows him to perceive all things around him, from lights, sounds, magic, Heat, Byakugan on steroids. N from Hunter x Hunter on steroids. And he'd have a broken ability like Merciless. Merciless, if he views you as an enemy, if he sees you as an enemy, he can kill you and break your soul at any given moment. And on top of this, he would have a move called Infinity Prison, which traps you inside of a pocket dimension or imaginary space for an eternity with no way out. Now it's time for Rimiru's ultimate skills. In my previous video about the 12 Guardians, I mentioned how they had Demon Lord aura. What makes Rimiru so much different is the fact that he has Dragon Spirit aura. It can kill you and do the same things as Demon Lord aura, but he can actually turn his aura into magic. Being in the presence of Rimuru could burn you, it could put you to sleep, it could cause physical damage, it could paralyze you, or just simply tear you to shreds. Rimuru's ultimate skill would be Azathoth, which would be a combination of Beelzebub, Raphael, Veldora, and Velgrid. Now, I could have gotten deeper into the nitty-gritty of the other ultimate skills, but I feel like there's kinda no need to, because Azathoth would take advantage of every single one of those skills, putting them to its fullest potential. With Azathoth, God of the Void, Rimuru would have the ability known as Soul Gluttony, which would basically be a hyper version of the Predator ability I mentioned before. But he would be able to devour his targets while ignoring the rules of the space-time. Rimuru would also have access to this special energy with Imaginary Collapse. This would be known as the ultimate destructive energy. And this same technique was also what was used to create the world of slime isekai. With this same energy, there is a point in the story where Rimuru could recreate the Earth. I don't want to go into too many details, but the Earth does get destroyed, and he's put into a Ben 10-esque situation where he has the option to recreate it or not. What does he do? You'll find out. I really can't stress enough just how broken this energy is. If it's even mishandled even slightly, it can destroy the entire planet. This would be energy even stronger than nuclear energy, nuclear magic. This energy would be in a completely different grade in itself. I'd even say it's like you breathe and blow up the planet. That is why when Zegion wields this, it's very miracle-esque. As I mentioned before with Velgrid and Veldora, the move for that would be True Dragon Release, where he would create a clone for himself and have both of them fight alongside him. Another move that he would have would be True Dragon Nucleation, where rather than giving them a specific form, he turns them into energy, putting both the dragons inside of his sword, creating an unmatched weapon. On top of this, Rimuru would have space-time domination, which would give him complete control over time, space, and all of the elements. And he can move instantly wherever he wants. Now, for the most part, I believe that covers everything Rimuru is capable of. Well, everything that I feel like would be notable unless you want an hour-long video. If you guys have never watched Slime Isekai, I hope this video made you interested in checking the series out. If you would like more videos like this, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting to give us support. And if you'd like to support us further, please donate to the Patreon. It takes a lot to make videos like this, and every penny counts. Love you guys. Here's some more videos, and enjoy.